I make a lot of noise. I'm from the Department of Mathematical Sciences at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and I'm also affiliated with the Norwegian Computing Center. And the title of my talk is Teaching Statistics with All Learning Resources Written in R Markdown. So why this? Well, when students enroll in classes, they have different backgrounds and they have different learning ambitions. Some just wants to pass the class, some wants to understand every theoretical aspect, and they have different learning styles. So some have a very visual learning style, some more verbal, or maybe they're learning from active work, or maybe they're more reflective and passive. So as teachers, we should aim to make diverse learning resources available in our courses. And I'm going to talk about promoting student active teaching methods, where I'm using R and R Markdown as an aid in achieving this. So that's my motivation. So I'm telling you a bit about the background, the students I'm going to talk about, and the kind of invention which I call module pages with R Markdown. A bit about the teaching philosophy and some R Markdown issues, observations, and closing. So first, we're here in the yellow part of the map. The map shows Australia with bright yellow colors. And do you find Norway in here? It's the ice-cold blue country up there. I'm based in Trondheim, which is the third largest city in Norway. It's 500 kilometers north of Oslo, the capital. We have an average annual temperature of 5 degrees. So my university, Norwegian University of Science and Technology, NTNU, is based in Trondheim, and the campus is on the map, on the image to the left. This is a campus, this is a fjord. And to the right you see the main building with the northern lights. We have around 40,000 students, most based in Trondheim. Important other things, the last speaker also had 45,000 students, but they had 400 faculty. We have 10 times more. And we have a lot of students entering our statistics course. We have an introduction to probability and statistics course that runs with 1,600 students every year, 800 every semester. And from these students, it is to come into NTNU, you have to have a very high grade average, so a lot of mathematics also. And out of these 1,600 students, we end up with 60 master students in statistics, year 4 and 5. So I'll just say that we have no fees, and there's no compulsory attendance to course activities. So it's very important for me that everything that I plan as a teacher is voluntarily. So I really want to get people to come to my classes and do the activities. There is no compulsory attendance. So I've done something to 2 courses that I've been teaching the last year. So I'm going to tell you that there's a course in statistical learning that we gave for the first time in 2018. It was volunteer, so it wasn't really on the reading list on the programs for any of the students. We had around 80 students. We were using the textbook of James et al., Introduction to Statistical Learning, with the course contents are the different aspects of statistical learning. When it comes to the learning outcome, I'll just draw your attention to that in the skill part, we want the student to know, based on existing data, how to choose a suitable statistical model, apply statistical methods, and perform the analysis using statistical software. So this has an applied sense to it also, this statistical learning course. The other course that I'm mentioning is a generalized linear model course with fewer students, only 35. It has a strong emphasis on R also, and in the exercise part, the first exercise is to make my LM R package, and then you do my GLM in the next exercise, and we're also replaying the Norwegian soccer league with post-row regression. And the course contest is, this is an ordinary generalized linear model course, and also with some generalized linear mixed models, and there is strong emphasis on programming in R. So for the skills part, the student can assess whether a generalized linear or a generalized linear mixed model can be used in a given situation and can carry out and evaluate such statistical analysis. So both these courses have a very strong applied feel to it. When we teach courses at NTNU, it's kind of a classic way to do it. We do 2 times 45 minutes plenary lectures 2 times a week for 14 weeks. And then we use blackboards, or some use slides and iPads. We do supervision of recommended and compulsory exercises by students' assistants. So we have some use of computer-aided systems, but mostly written assignments. So there's actually a very limited interaction between teacher and students, and all the collaboration the students do are mainly self-initiated. We communicate through learning management systems and wiki pages, and of course we have textbooks, class notes, some videos from the lectures, and also some studio videos, but that's mainly for the larger courses. So this is the setting at NTNU. Does it look like the setting at some of your universities? So it's a classic setup. So then, of course, many of us want the students to learn better, deeper, and we might believe, this is not a very drastic solution or hypothesis, that active teaching methods could achieve that. So what I'm going to tell about is I'm going to tell about going from more passive to active teaching methods by replacing one of these 2 times 45 plenary lectures with a more active format. And by doing that, I'm kind of not lecturing so much, so I'm skipping a few things plenary, so I have to go through that in another way. And my solution is then linked to R and R Markdown that plays the role to kind of bridge between these 2 formats. Okay, so what I have been spending a lot of time with is to make so-called module pages with R Markdown. So for the courses, a useful strategy is to divide the material into smaller team-based module. So maybe it could be chapters in the textbook, or it could be like linear regression, Poisson regression, binomial regression, etc. And for each of these modules, I have this on the agenda for 1 to 3 weeks of study. So for each of those topics, I've made an R Markdown module page, where I've written some introduction and aims, I have motivating examples, and then I have like a theory example loop. I have some recommended exercises, and I have references and packages to install. And this looks much like what we've done at the workshop with tutorials, maybe except that there's a stronger emphasis there on the theory part. So I do a lot of mathematics in LaTeX with derivation presence, figures and examples in R, so R code is visible. And I'm using these module pages for all parts of the course, so I'm making different types of output from it. So if we just want to look at one example here, I'm now showing an example from my GLM course, a module on linear mixed effects models. So it starts with what's the plan for this module, and maybe it's going to, if we go to the first week, this is something that we do in the first week, and then maybe there is an example here, maybe an example with beaches and species, and we do some plotting, and we do some mathematics with nice LaTeX formulas, and in the end of the week there are interactive sessions that I'm going to talk about with exam types questions. So this is like the layout of the module page. It looks much like what you've seen with R Markdown before. So, so that was the example. So what do I do with these module pages? I was saying that I think that if we have active students, they could maybe learn more, since active students are more able to analyze, evaluate, and synthesize ideas. Is that possible? So if I was to do some active teaching here, so I could easily pose a question and ask you to discuss with your neighbor and then hear your results. That's kind of active. I could do an in-class quiz. Of course, I could also say that at NTNU we have the invention Kahoot, which is very nice, also has a team mode. We can do project and we can do individual exercises, or maybe in groups, or we can do group discussions. But I've done a different thing that I called interactive lectures. So maybe if I first say that a lecture could be a learning area where the teacher is in charge. So I'm the director. So I'm deciding what we're doing. So in a plenary lecture, the teacher is the lecturer. There is limited amount of interaction between student and lecturer. We're not really interacting, are we? And there is a limited amount of interaction between student. Yep. So the lecturer is active, student passive. Where? Lecture theater, auditorium, resources. Well, I could have a blackboard, whiteboard, screen for projection, microphone, desks in a row, or chairs in a row. So the positive thing is that I can present a large amount of material in a relatively brief amount of time. It's very efficient for me. But is it really efficient for you? Might be. If you have a reflective learning style that you learn by just listening and seeing, that could work okay. We need to have dedicated spaces, but lecture halls are common in the university, so that's okay. So this is a plenary lecture. So what if we were to invent an interactive lecture? What would that be? Well, the teacher is not the lecturer, more of an advisor. And maybe also teaching assistants might be present. So the focus here would be on interaction between a student and teacher, and also between student and student. So this means that both the student teacher and teaching assistants, all of those are active. Where should we do that? Should we stay in the lecture hall? Well, we should maybe have a room designed for interaction, collaboration, and activity. And the resources that we have, maybe it would be nice to have whiteboards, group tables, screens, or maybe some small podium. So the positive thing here is that the students are active. Negative or challenging is that this involves a lot of group processes and maybe unfamiliar settings, and maybe also dedicated space. And I'm going to say then that how to make this plenary and so the plenary and interactive lectures work together, I do that with these module pages. So many of the universities have these nice innovative learning spaces now. And at NTNU we have a few of those, not that many. This is a picture from SMIA, the smithy. So we have a room with a flat floor. It's a room for 50 students. We see a picture with 8 group tables. At each group table there is a screen, so you can project from a PC or a laptop. And next to the screen there is a whiteboard where you can draw. So this is an interactive learning area. And this has room for 50 students. We also have larger ones that have room for 160 students. It's like terraced, rebuilt lecture halls. So what do we do in this interactive plenary lectures? So the module pages are the background. So in the beginning of the week, I have a plenary lecture based on the module page. So I generate from the module page slides. And then, so I talk about things, I tell them about Poisson regression for the first time. And then I leave some stuff, maybe some theoretical stuff, maybe some exercises, and I leave that for the interactive lecture in the end of the week. So when they come to the interactive lecture, I divide them in random groups, like 4 to 6 people. I give an introduction, max 5 minutes. They sit in groups and work on problem sets, like 35 minutes. Then I do a short summing up. Then there is a pause with refreshments, and then we repeat. So the problem sets for the interactive lectures could be previous exam questions, because the exam questions are usually like you have to understand the setting, not so much focus on technical stuff. So you could do some mathematics, you can do some interpretation of R data sets. So this is like all of these 2 courses are based are towards applied sciences, in addition to a lot of theory also in the GLM course, so they can discuss the analysis on the exams. And in statistical learning, we didn't have an previous exam, since it was the first time that was given, so I was just making other examples. And if you see here the picture from Smia at the left there, so you see that there are 4 students in a group here. To the left, they have the problem set on the screen, and then they're working together and discussing. So one of the at the table is in charge of the screen, and then there's somebody at the whiteboard trying to solve a problem here. So they're working together as a group. And I'm running around with the teaching assistant, asking how they're doing, checking on the answer, and answering questions from them. So there weren't that many students that participated. We had one class with 35 students and one with 83. So we did ask them with a questionnaire, but we also had feedback using focus groups. I'll just tell you a bit about 3 feedbacks. Student number A said it's very nice to have 2 hours every week to discuss with others and be able to explain to others and work with the course material from a new point of view. We are not told what is right, but we find time finding out together. And student B says, for most sessions I feel I learned a lot. I remember the concept we work on has been talked about in the plenary lectures, and then I talk about the details with the others in the group and get to explain to the others. Then I feel I really know this concept. I don't really learn so much new, but I learn what I've already gone through in the plenary lectures a lot better. So that's the last one. They were also a bit worried. I believe Mette cannot go so deep in the plenary lectures compared to when we had the double amount of plenary lectures. She plans for us to learn by ourselves, which I think is a good thing. I believe that we have a greater gain from learning together and not seeing it, from seeing each other's problem, and we learn from each other. So they were worried that they couldn't go so deep, but they understood that they could learn from each other. So this was really the main motivation behind the module pages. So having the full story written out on these pages and then just choosing parts of it to present in the plenary lecture and parts interactive lecture. That was the reason for having this module pages. And the students, they are happy, like 90% like the module pages. And of course, this is low-hanging fruit. Do you want this additional learning resource? Would you answer no to an additional learning resource? Okay, and I think it binds together plenary, interactive lecture, and theory in general, and they like seeing R code, etc. So the R Markdown issues, I'm going to finish with that. So I made the module pages in a way so it could make 3 outputs easily. And if I want to have different outputs, I'll tell about these outputs now. It's really hard to get optimal graphical display of all 3 different outputs. So we will see that I've chosen some way in between. So the R Markdown file for the module pages is available to the students like a notebook. I have a Beamer presentation for slides that I present in the plenary lectures, and I do write also class notes from scratch. There's a PDF version, which is like a textbook thing that the students can print and use as class notes. And there is an HTML version with table of contents, which is important, which they use in these interactive lectures. So they have the problem set, and then they scroll back and forth to see the theory and discuss around this. We also have in this course compulsory exercises, both of the courses, and then they get an R Markdown template and have to hand in an R Markdown, RMD, and PDF file in the learning system. And that's, of course, easy to grade. And we encourage them to use GitHub or Bitbucket for collaboration, and they work in groups. So I'll finish with some observations. So I've spent a lot of time now making these module pages. So it's around 20 in total. Each of them is 20 to 40 pages in the PDF version. And in the end of the module or in the start of the module, it's very important to tell the students which are the packages they need to install to be able to do this. And there was a lot of scrolling back and forth in this interactive lecture before I discovered a table of contents to the left in the HTML version. Originally, I had planned to do this in Jupyter notebooks, but then I went to the USR conference in Brussels last summer and really got convinced that R Markdown is a better choice for me. But still, we have this competition with Python and Jupyter notebooks. And all of these students that took the class were on the master level, and people reported back that they thought that the students were now more easily to engage in like doing small analysis, but because they didn't know R Markdown so well. I know I'm 15 seconds over time now, so I'll just redirect you to the HTML version of this talk, where you of course can find the links to all of the resources that I've made in these two courses, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, we don't have a fourth speaker, but we do have time for a couple of questions for Meta if anybody has some. Yes, Matthias.
Okay, my question is regarding the group selection at random, that you select the groups at random. Is that correct? For each lesson or each term?
So the question was about the group selection. So these were students at the master level that knew each other. So we were very bold, and for every session, they came into the group and they were randomly assigned to groups. For younger students, like those that were on year 2, we didn't do that. That was too scary for them. So then we had more a stable version. But one thing I have to do better when I do this now in August is to have more of information around group processes.
Anybody else? Yes.
Have you heard of the Learn R package? Would you consider using that for distributing materials?
So the question was, do I know about?
The package is called Learn R. It tries to make like interactive exercises within R Markdown.
So the question was if I've heard about Learn R and interactive lectures, no sessions?
Yeah, like have you considered, did you try and use it, did you like it, or have you?
No, I haven't tried using this. These are much of these things that are going on in the interactive session is not really R. So they really don't want to code. They want to discuss together the output from R. And these are students that already know R pretty well. But I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Right off the back.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, when I submit the R Markdown code, can it go through Turnitin or not?
So when they submit the R Markdown code,
Turnitin. My university forces me to get students anything online, it's got to go through Turnitin.
so I don't know what that word is, turn it in. Yeah.
So Turnitin is it's a plagiarism checker as well. It's a part of the, you can tie it into Blackboard for submission of assignments.
No, we're not using a plagiary checker. So if two groups handed in the same exercise, that would be nice because that meant that they had collaborated.